In this lecture, we'll have a look at outbound delivery and the creation of the document. All throughout this video or this lecture, we'll have a look at the processes surrounding the creation of a delivery, the technical details of a delivery and the structure, how it's stored in SAP, a demonstration, and the configuration behind the outbound deliveries itself. So, an outbound delivery represents a request to ship a group of products or material from the warehouse or the plant to another location, and usually specifically to a customer. It also represents the handover of the document or the process from the order management to the logistics. So once you create a delivery, the responsibility of managing the process now belongs to the logistics team. There are 4 types of deliveries actually. And the first and the most common is the outbound delivery, and it's associated with the sales aspects of the business and primarily focuses on shipping the products, i.e. the materials, to the customer. We have an inbound delivery, which refers to the management of incoming materials from suppliers, and it's actually created with reference to a purchase order. We have the intercompany transfer. It's technically still an outbound delivery, but it transfers materials from one plant to another that's in the same company. Note here I say company rather than company code or legal entity. You might have a situation where you're transferring from the company in Germany, let's say Coca-Cola Germany to Coca-Cola France. They're legally separate entities, but they belong to the same parent. And in that way, this really the same company. Or you could have internally one company like Coca-Cola Germany in the north ships to Coca-Cola Germany in the south, for example. And lastly, you have outbound deliveries from a process called subcontracting, which is where we ship products from a warehouse to a vendor so that they can work on the product, they can do extra manufacturing processes and so forth, and then they send the product back to us. In this process flow diagram, you can see the process of creating the delivery, running through a number of logistics processes, and posting the goods issue, which means that the delivery is complete. So let's have a look at the life cycle of a delivery, and let's have a look at where we want to concentrate on in this video. So the delivery due list here is where we actually create the delivery in SAP, and it represents the start of the handoff process of, as you can see, the sales order here, and the stock transport order, and the subcontracting handoff. So what we do is by creating delivery, as we said before, we're handing off the process to the logistics teams. And this starts off at the delivery due list, which is listing all of the sales orders, stock transport orders that are actually due to be created into deliveries. Now, the thing that you should take into consideration, or the most important thing that you should take into consideration, is when you create the delivery. So we want to create the delivery as late as possible in the daily life cycle. So the reason why you want to do that is you want to offer some flexibility in terms of ATP. So you want to ensure that you allocate the ATP correctly to all the orders. Because once you create the delivery, it's a hard allocation and you can't change the allocation anymore. That's why you want to create the delivery as late as possible to allow this changing of ATPs. For example, an order might come with a higher priority than before. You might want to have a bit of changing of the allocation. The second thing that you should think about is flexibility in terms of changes. Yeah, you have to be flexible because once you create the delivery, you can't do any more changes in the sales order. Yeah, so here, as you can see, once I've created the delivery, that sales order cannot be changed anymore because all of the information is already in the delivery. We'll also see in the next lectures how the subcontracting is actually not created via the standard SAP due list. It's via actually a different transaction. Now, in this video, we will not be seeing how we create a delivery via subcontracting in detail. There is a separate video for the subcontracting process itself. But just for now, we're going to look at the sales order and the stock transport orders and how we create deliveries via the delivery due list. As I mentioned before, the subcontracting obviously is a different transaction, and we look transaction here, and we look at how we do that in a separate lecture. But in the end, all of them will create a delivery, either through the delivery due list that will then run an ATP check, and then the delivery will be created. Once the delivery is created, we also have the activities here of picking, of confirming the picking, maybe a bit of packing, printing of the packing list, for example. We post the goods issue. We'll have a look at that in detail. We'll also then reduce some inventory stock because we post the goods issue, and we do the shipping, the printing of shipping documents. In this particular lecture, we will concentrate on the first activity, which is the creation of the delivery from the delivery due list. Before we go on, let's have a look at the structure of the delivery. And as we mentioned before, the standard outbound delivery is created with reference to a sales order. So what does this actually mean? As you can see on the right hand side, you have the delivery here, and on the left hand side you have the sales order. You have the header of the sales order, and information on the header level of the sales order is copied into the header level of the delivery. We do this by a logic called the copy control, and you can see more details of this in the next lecture. But for now, just assume that there's some logic that just copies data from the header to the header level, from the sales order header to the delivery header. And this is the same for the item. You have an item to item copy, and also from the schedule line. So data from the schedule line we copy into the item of the delivery. Note that there is no schedule line on the delivery at all. Okay, but also we have items that are values that are copied to the header of the delivery. So for example, and also schedule line values that are copied onto the header. So what are they? Why is items copied over? So for example, the shipping point is copied from the item level into the header level of the delivery, and it's a way of grouping particular items together in one delivery header. The schedule line, we have the deadline, so all of the delivery dates, the goods issue date, the recommended delivery dates, they're all actually copied onto the header level. So what happens if we have, for example, two items with different values? Then we have something called a delivery split, which basically means that from one sales order you will actually create two or more deliveries. The most common delivery split is when you have a sales order and you have items with different shipping points. That will cause a delivery split. Or if you have a schedule line that has more than one delivery deadlines, that will cause again a delivery split, because that delivery deadlines at the goods issue date or the delivery arrival time is copied onto the header level. Having different ones on different items again will cause a split. So it's important to understand a delivery will only have a header and item, and various information from the sales orders is copied onto the delivery. There are some values that are redetermined. We saw before the route in theory could be redetermined. Yeah. And it's not always a corresponding. It's not like item to item, schedule line to item. It goes all over the place a slightly little bit. We will have a look a little bit more of this logic in the copy control, but for now, just understand that data is copied from the sales order into the delivery when we create the delivery. There are 3 transactions in SAP that you can use to create an outbound delivery. When you use them depends on the scenario that you are facing, and this will drive the transaction, and it's up to you to decide which transaction is best for you. The first is the VL01N, which is used to create a single delivery with reference to a sales order. Pretty simple. The next is the VL10. Now the X is used to represent a letter from A to I. We'll have a look at that. And we use it to create deliveries en masse. So you can create more than one deliveries, multiple deliveries very quickly. It's also the only way to create a delivery from a stock transport order. And finally, we have the transaction ME2O, which is used to create outbound deliveries from the subcontracting process. This is the only transaction you can use to create deliveries from the subcontracting process. We won't cover this in this video. We'll cover this in a later video so that you can see the end-to-end process. As I said before, the VL10X is actually a VL10 A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I. You can swap them. And each one represents the creation either of a sales order based on purchase orders and so forth. So, for example, in G, you can create deliveries based on sales orders or stock transport orders, which is the purchase order. And you would, as a user, decide which one you want to use. So let's say you only want to create deliveries based on sales orders, you use VL10A. If you only want to create deliveries based on stock transport orders, you use transaction VL10B. If you want to mix the two, then you use the other transactions here. And the way to use it is that when you run your scenario, you then decide, do you want to create sales orders and stock transport orders together, or do you want to just create sales orders and so forth? Yeah. So how or what type of deliveries or what type of outbound deliveries you want to create drives which transaction you want to use. So in closing, we've seen what an outbound delivery is, which is basically the start of the logistics process in order to ship a product to the customer. We've seen what type of delivery there is and the structure and when to create it. So now let's go on to the next video in which we will see how to create the delivery in SAP and the configuration behind it. So now we will have a look at how we create a delivery in SAP. We will have a look at the 2 transactions, VL01N, which is the single, and the mass one, which is a VL10. For now, let's have a look at how we would create a delivery using the single. So I go to Logistics, Logistics Execution, Outbound Delivery, and as you can see here, outbound processing, goods issue, outbound delivery, create, single. Whew, quite a lot. So VL01N with reference to a sales order. You have here VL01NO is without a single, without any reference. So I'm going to create one with a reference here. The first thing you see is the shipping point, which is on the sales order, and you have the selection date, which is actually representing of the material availability date on the sales order. So let's have a look at the sales order. And here's the sales order I've prepared. And as you can see here, under the shipping tab in the schedule line, the MAD date is on the 9th of September. So if I go back into the delivery selection, if I put the 9th here, press enter, and there you go, the quantity of 10 for this delivery. Now, just to prove that it uses that date, let's go back. Yeah, and if I put a date, let's say before the 9th, so the 8th, and I press enter, you notice that there's no schedule delivery up to the selected date. So that shows that it uses the schedule line or the MAD date for its selection process. So now let's have a look at the VL10 transaction. So if I go back out, still under the create menu, we have the collective processing, and as you can see here, you see all of the VL10 transactions. The VL10 A, B, C, D, E, and each one will process a different type of document. So let's have a look at the sales order VL10A. I'll double click on that, and as you can see right on the top, you have the shipping point to select the deliveries. Then you have the delivery creation date, which actually comes from, as we know, the scheduling, which calculates when the delivery must be created in order for it to be delivered on time. And then you have the delivery creation rule. Now, this automatically populates a delivery creation date with either today, today and tomorrow, all until this week. And it's great. You don't have to calculate. You can just have it as a variant. And leave the delivery creation date blank, and then based on the rule that you put in, the system will automatically calculate all the deliveries that you need to create. Now, this works great if you have a batch job, especially in the background. It might be that you only want to create deliveries that have to be created today, or today and tomorrow. And this selection is driven by the business. When do they want to create the delivery, and for what date range? So it's always important to understand what the business requirement is. Then under the general data, you have various options like the delivery priority or shipping conditions. I just want to point out route. This is quite important here because route allows us to segregate different sales orders and create them at different times. For example, you might want to create a particular route first because it needs to go out first. Because you want that option to create the deliveries as late as possible, you might want to say this route needs to be shipped out first. I'll create this first, process them, then create the routes that can be shipped out later. So you create the deliveries as low as possible. Or for example, you can exclude return routes. This is a way to do it. Next, you have sales organization, so you can create deliveries based on sales organization. You have document types also, so it might be that you want to exclude return deliveries, return sales orders, or it might be that you want to create rush orders every single hour, for example. This is where you would, when you run the background job, you can put in the delivery types. And lastly, the goods issue date, so it might be that you want to say create all deliveries where it needs to be issued for today. In the sales order here, you have the document range, the sole two-party, but more importantly is the forwarding agent. So you might want to prioritize the creation of deliveries for a particular forwarding agent. Then you have the delivery block. Obviously, you don't want to create sales or the deliveries with a particular delivery block. You have the plant here and the storage location, but I would usually use the shipping point instead. It's a little bit more better. Another one is partner function, if you ever want to create a delivery based on partner function. So let's go ahead. I'll execute this. And in this case, for this sales order, I want to create the delivery in background mode. We've seen how we create it in the foreground, so let's create one in the background. I click on the background mode, and SAP will go back. It would run through all of its script, its copy control, its checking, its configuration, and it would then create the delivery. So it has created the delivery here, and now if it's green means it's good. Now let's have a look at the document error messages if there's any. Okay, so it says, oh, I've created one delivery with no errors. If I click on document, I can see the document number here. And if I click on the document flow here, I can then see the link between the sales orders and the delivery. So this means that the delivery has been created based on the sales order en masse. And in real life, in the business context, you would use this transaction to create or to select lots and lots of sales orders based on your selection parameter, and you would create all of the deliveries in one go, and usually as a background job. So it's important before you create the deliveries en masse to decide what is your selection parameter, to try to create the deliveries as late as possible. And so you would select all the sales orders based on your selection criteria, you would create all of the deliveries, and you would process them. And it also means that you can run the program multiple times to create groups of deliveries, for example, or you could exclude certain deliveries, or you could, for example, run the program, create a certain set of deliveries, and then maybe an hour, run it again and create another set of deliveries. And it's really up to the business how they want to, what type of business it is, and how they're driving the delivery creation. Now that we have created delivery, let's have a look at the structure of the delivery we've created. So if we go to logistics, logistics execution, outbound processing, and goods issue for outbound delivery, in this case I'm going to the change mode, so transaction VL02N, and I entered the delivery that I just created. And as you can see here, we have the delivery, we have the ship to party, and the outbound number. And if we go to header, the first tab that we see is the processing, and here is all of the delivery milestones that we talked about on the header level. Here's the actual goods issue date, and below it we have all of the statuses, whether it's relevant for picking or not, if it's been picked, packed, confirmation, whether it's relevant for transportation planning. It's all here on the header level. If we go to picking tab, we then see here the picking deadline, when it needs to be picked, but more importantly the warehouse on the delivery header. So this means you can only have one warehouse on the header level. Loading is about the same. You have the loading date, number of packages, and the transport group if you have it. And if we now go to shipment, you then have the shipment data, so the transportation planning, when is it supposed to be done, the delivery date, if there is a time against it as well, if it's relevant for transportation planning, that's here, the shipping point and the route. And as you can now see, both of those that were on the sales order item level is now on the header level in the delivery. So if two items had different values, it would have caused two different deliveries. Then you have your bill of lading, information that's relevant for the shipment, like bill of lading, transcode, they're not so important, and they're mostly used to record shipment information. Next is the foreign trade tab, which is usually used for the intrastat processing, but it's usually done by the sales and distribution people, but it's good to know where it is. So it's in this tab here on the header level. Financial processing, it's not important to us. Let's skip on. So for the administration here, you see the document type and the document category, along with when the document was created and the delivery priority. Any partner functions that you might have that's copied over from the sales order is here. The long text is here. Now, condition is again for pricing, and this is used if you ever want to have delivery pricing. So if you want to calculate your delivery costs from the freight forwarder, this is where you would do it. But in most cases you don't do it, you do it in the shipment, but if you ever wanted to do delivery, it's here. Dates, this is for events. If you ever have a different event milestone after the delivery has been PGI'd, this is where you would store those type of events. So let's now look finally you have the parcel. So if you ever have handling unit management, this is where you would see the parcel information here and the tracking of it if you ever have that functionality. Now let's go to the item level. For this material, you see the item category here and the quantity. And let's go to processing first, and here you see the status again, but on the item level. Then you have the material number, you have the transport group and the unloading group. That's the most important. And you also have the batch number if there's only one batch. If I go to batch split, and if you have batch split turned on, if you ever pick more than one batch, it will be stored here. So we batch 1 quantity, batch 2 quantity, and so forth. Yeah, so if you have batch management turned on, this is where you would store that data. If we go to the picking tab, you then have the quantity that you pick. Now it could be different. If the warehouse is a different unit of measure, it might be that your picking unit of measure is different from what's on the delivery. You have the material availability date, we've talked about this, and if it's relevant for WM. And the storage type. As you can see here, it's relevant for WM, but the bin is empty because this is a lean WM warehouse, so it doesn't have a bin number. If it was a normal WM, a bin number would be there. Under the loading and shipping, you have shipping information, which is the transport group and loading group, not so important. Then you have foreign trade on the item level, financial processing, not important, so let's move on. What's important here is the predecessor data, which tells you if it was created with reference to a sales order, what the sales number was, what the item of the sales order was also. It's good to find out in the document flow. And finally, in the administration tab, you have the material movement type. And this is important because when you press that post goods issue button, the system will execute this material movement type. It will look at this material movement type, you'll see what are the account postings and what is the invoice postings that you will do, and it will do it. Yeah, so 601 is a standard one, which means outbound reduced stock. And if you look at a return document, it'll be totally different. So this is where you would control what happens to the inventory and what account postings you would use. And as we said before, this value is copied from the schedule line in the sales order. So to recap, we have on the delivery the header information is applied to the whole document and item level information. And on the header level, we have information such as the organization structure. We have the logistic deadlines, which is copied from the schedule line. We have the shipping information at the shipping point, foreign trade, packing information. We'll have a look at this later. Output determination. We'll have a look at this later also. And partner functions. On the item level, we have the material and quantity, the material movements that we saw before, the item category of the item, obviously, picking, packing, and storage location, batch split, if there were any, and the predecessor data, i.e. the sales order or the purchase order that the delivery was created with reference from. So that in all is how we create the delivery and the general structure of the delivery. So now let's have a look at what happens technically when you create an outbound delivery either in the delivery due list or via VL01. The first thing that the system does is that it checks the index table, this VEPVG. Yeah, when it runs the delivery due list, it actually checks to see that the entry, it actually reads that table and presents that table to you. If you were to create via VL01, it would actually read from that table to do all the copy rules. Yeah, so that is why sometimes if you think that, oh, this delivery is not there or it's not being selected via the delivery due list, do a quick search in the table VEPVG, it's the index table, and see if your delivery is in that table. If the delivery is in that table, then your selection was wrong. If the delivery is not in that table, then there is a rule that's stopping SAP saying that that sales order is now relevant for delivery. Yeah, so that's a tip for you. So a tip here: if you ever have to write any custom code that determines open orders or something like that, read the index table rather than looking at VBAK and VBAP. It's much faster, and the index table already has all of the logic pre-built in. So you don't have to have anything else. If it's in that table, it can be delivered. It's as simple as that. Okay, so once you've started the delivery creation, the system will then start the copy control rules. We'll have a look at that in another lecture, but in the copy control rules, it has the document type and the item category. So it determines the document type by the sales order. It looks at the configuration for the delivery type. We saw that. And the item category is the same. So it will take that item category that's in the sales order, it'll just copy that across into the delivery. If the item is determined, then it will look at the table T184L to determine what the item category is. When we say a new item is determined, it means that if, for example, there was a bomb explosion, or it had to redetermine an item, or for example packaging material, you had to put a new item there, then yes, it's a new item, it's not in the sales order, it's in the delivery, and the system then needs to determine the item category. And it does that by reading the table T184L. As the logic is very similar to the sales order item determination, it reads that table, determines the item category for that delivery, and it puts it in there. The system will then copy all of the reference data from the original document into the delivery. For example, it could copy the partner function, the milestone data, or in most cases, the most important is it would copy the enterprise structure. And when we say enterprise structure, we mean items like the plant, or more importantly, the shipping point. And as we noted before, if in the document we have two different shipping points, then we'll actually have a split, i.e. we'll have two deliveries. If configured, SAP will also redetermine some values like the picking and loading dates, the routes or the materials, the quantity of materials to be shipped, i.e. it would rerun availability again. And finally, it would also update all of the tables. For example, it would update the document flow table, BBFA, and it would say this sales order has created this delivery. Now, this is not an exhaustive list of everything that happens. It's just a list of everything that's important for people to know about. Okay, we've seen the PowerPoint presentation. Let's have a look and see how it's done properly in SAP. You see here we have the VL10 A screen, the delivery due list, and you can see that the shipping point here is 2400. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to execute the transaction, and as you can see, I have two documents, sales orders here. Don't worry about the red because it's in the past, but as you can see here, totally all of these orders here come from the sales orders. Yeah, so the sales orders here are providing what we call the demand in the delivery due list. Now, if I were to go to the table, here's the index table that we've seen. I put in the shipping point 2400 and I execute. You can see here also you can see the two sales orders that are in the index table. Obviously there's a little bit more here for the selection. You have the sold to, the ship to, the sales organization, the weight, things that are actually in the selection screen in the VL10. So you can see here there's a correspondence of the entries in this table and the output in the VL10 screen. So if we now go to the config, let me go to SPRO and I go to IMG, logistics execution, shipping, deliveries, define item category, determination in deliveries. And you can see here it's like the sales order. You have the delivery type here, the item usage, you have the item category, and the item category that's a manual. Like the sales order, it's similar. So if we were to go back, and now finally let's have a look at the table VBFA. This is the document flow table, so let me put it in here. VBFA, oops, let me just try that again. VBFA, execute. And here you can see the preceding document, which is the document before, and the sequential document, which is the document after. And basically what it means is, for example, from a sales order, you then would create a delivery. So the preceding document would be the sales order, and the sequential document is the delivery. And if you, in the functionality, remember we talked about you had the document flow in the sales order, that when you clicked would show the sales orders, the deliveries linked to the sales orders, the invoices linked to the sales orders, or the invoices linked to the deliveries. And this is the table that holds all of that information. So if we were to open the category here, you can see here it has all of the different types. I'm going to choose J for delivery, and the preceding document category I'm going to say C, and I'm going to execute. And what it's going to show me is all of the sales orders and the deliveries that were created after. And you can see here the sales orders and the delivery numbers that are linked to it. You see the quantities here as well, and you will notice then all the other details. What's important to note is all of this is on item level, so each sales order item has a corresponding delivery item or invoice item and so forth. So finally, why is this VBFA table important? This table is quite important to use because it holds all of it groups all of the documents together. So from a sales order you can find all the corresponding or follow-on deliveries. From a sales order you can find all the invoices, or if you had an invoice number you could find the corresponding sales order. So this is great when you are designing a report, and it's good to say, okay, for this sales orders, find me all of the deliveries, or from this deliveries, find me all of the sales orders and all of the invoices. It's the fast way to look what we call up and down the process flow to find all of the corresponding documents. So to summarize, when we create a delivery, in the delivery due list, it actually looks at the index table to make sure that the sales order is present in there, so that it can validate that it's a proper demand that can be created into delivery. It looks at the item configuration table. It looks at the configuration. It looks at the copy control. And after it creates the delivery, it updates the index table and also all other tables. There's quite a lot of delivery tables that it needs to update. But the VBFA is the important one because it's quite a popular table to use. So we've now looked under the hood to see how SAP technically creates the delivery. We've seen what it does, and we've seen the use of the index table. So now let's move on and watch the next video.